So, in a move that I really didn't think anyone would think was going to happen, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 patch adds disclaimer to Codex entry that Hans Capon is 20 years old because people were saying, well, the dude's like 15 years old, which, while historically accurate, you know, being technically an adult at the time, that's not how things work nowadays, and people are not happy about the dude possibly having sexual relations at 15. Um, so I tried to see it from both sides. Obviously I can see people trying to put the, modern things the way it is now. It's like, oh, 18 or older, you're an adult. And like 15, that's a teenager. But then I'm like, well, people are gonna say it's historically accurate because people back then, they were fighting in wars and they were like 14, 15 years old. You had, 13-year-old girls getting pregnant, and so it's historically accurate. So I'm trying to see from both sides. So I didn't pick one side or the other. I stayed neutral and tried to see it from both sides. Tried to see it from both sides. But yeah, they decided to add a disclaimer. A new patch for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has added a disclaimer that Warhorse Studios took poetic license with Hans Capone during him and turned him into a 20-year-old. In the original Kingdom Come Deliverance, the Codex entry for Hans indicated that he was born around 1388 and died in 1419, which he was like 31 or something when he died. It stated the underage son, after his death of his father, his family, the lords of Lepa, his uncle Gindrich, and son Hanush, and his brothers became his guardians. Given the game takes place 1403, Capone was around the age of 15 based on the 1388 date. However, it's possible he could have been younger or older. Czech website Stredovek, which is dedicated to Czech history, also notes that Han was born sometime before 1398. It also states his son Hynek was born sometime in the early 15th century. It does not provide a specific date. Furthermore, it was documented in 1408 that Patasek, whatever, dowry for his wife, Jitka, was Czech website Jiskra also noted that Hans Orjan did not even come of age until 1406. A machine translation from the site states Jessic was already a 15-year-old man. Like again, that was just how it was back then. 13-year-old girls getting pregnant constantly, from like the time they were young, they were getting pregnant. Boys who were like 14, 15 years old were considered men. So like I said, I tried to see it from both sides because I understand people were like, oh my God, the kid's 15. But then other people were like, oh, well, it's historically accurate. So I didn't have any real, I was trying to stay neutral. And yet people were still complaining about it. People were still complaining about me staying neutral and trying to see it from both sides. You can't fucking please anyone because people are fucking pathetic. He took refuge in Polna Castle. On top of that, top of all this, Warner this was former Warhouse Studio social media manager Jerry Rydell noted in a post on the Kingdom Come Deliverance Steam forums back in 2022 that the original intention for Henry, the game's main protagonist, was that he was in teenage. He wrote, the original idea was Henry was in teenage. Remember that medieval times you are taken almost adult in 14 to 16, helping with the work already from 10 to 12. Some girls already married in 15. Of course, the actor is older. The movements of the character scanned in the motion capture studios are adult, so you'll have rather impressive of a guy in 20s. Oh, the silly translations. Um, However, he added, but the idea was he was very young, uneducated, unexperienced teenager. Before the end of KCD, he actually becomes a man. Not aging, of course, but in a similar way boys become men, rather inside. I hope I explained it a little bit more. In the end, it doesn't even matter. He really does that. In the end, it doesn't matter. We tried so hard and got so far. The important is the emotional connection you have to Henry on his way, I believe. He pulled out the it doesn't even matter. That's supposed to be my thing. When Kingdom Come 2 Deliverance launched, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 launched, Warhorse Studios changed the Codex entry for Hans despite the game still taking place in 1403. It removed the descriptor that he was underage. Instead, it stated, son of Jan Jessic, after the death of his, so it's basically the same thing. They just removed the whole underage part of it. As discovered by users of the Kiwi Farm forums and brought to the author's attention by YouTuber What's the Egad, Warhorse added a disclaimer to Hans' Codex entry in a recent patch of the game. At the end of the Codex entry, it now states, unlike his historical precursor, however, we took the poetic license of making Hans a 20-year-old man in our game. Only after people started saying, hey, the dude's like fucking 15 years old. And if you're going to be historically accurate, that's fine. But then showing him getting down and dirty with another dude, I mean, people are, yeah, you can understand why people, even if it is historically accurate, why people are going to be like, ugh. So, I mean, just because something is historically accurate doesn't mean you have to show it on screen. You know, us knowing that he's a man at 15, you don't have to show him having sex with another dude for us to know that he's a man. So, while, yes, historically accurate, you don't have to show it. You know, I've said before, it's like showing people in movies going to the bathroom or whatever. Do we know they're human beings? Do they go to the bathroom? Of course. Do you need to show it? Nope. Or, sex scenes that, 5 minutes of, the protagonist and his love interest fucking raw dogging it. It's like, do we know they have sex? Of course. Do we have to sit there and listen to for 5 minutes? No, because the movie's like an hour and a half, and 5 minutes of it is now dedicated to just watching two people fuck. So, just because something is accurate doesn't mean you have to show it. So, that's all I gotta say about that. The addition of this disclaimer was noted in the game's patch notes. It is uncertain whether the disclaimer was added to the Codex entry, or why the disclaimer. Yeah, why? I wonder why. But Warhorse Studios creative director Daniel Vavra was previously confronted with the idea that that a depiction of sodomy in the game between Hans and Henry was in reality a depiction of child sodomy. Vavra responded to the writing on Twitter. Imagine that a woman at the time were married at the age of 12 and had children. Also, they needed witnesses during first sex. It's like, okay, what's your point? That it's still, again, just because something was historically accurate doesn't mean you need to show it. You know? I get different, culture and this and that. I get it. But still, just because something's historically accurate doesn't mean it needs to be shown. We know that brutal deaths like the rack and all that other stuff, having, pulling them down, the thing, and you pull them down and rip them in half. We know that. Do we have to see it? No. They're just, you don't have to show certain things. Like, we can understand that Hans is a man without you showing him engaging in any kind of sexual activity. His actions alone should be able to speak for themselves and say, hey, he's a man. Despite being like 15 years old, he's a man. Come on. The individual retorted, if you're aiming for historical accuracy, why are there no children in the game? Because they could be killed. Killing them is bad, but having sex with them is fine. Okay, bud. Vavra said, So there are no children, but Capone is a child, and you seem kind of lost. Uh, so Capone is the only child in the game, and coincidentally, it is possible to have sex with him. You were lost when you designed the game. 5 days later, Favreau issued another statement. Historical character, birthday is unknown. It's probably before 1388. Got married in 1403. His son was born 1404. He also added his marriage is actually part of the story of KCD. Are they trying to hide the child abuse they put in their game only after the backlash? Only if Daniel Favreau went, oops, we suck at math, thanks. So again, I can see why people got upset. I can see people saying, oh, well, it's historically accurate. But as I said, just because something is historically accurate doesn't mean it needs to be shown. You know, if the dude is 15, then the dude is 15. You don't have to show him having sex with, someone else. It's just, you don't need to. It doesn't add anything to the plot. It doesn't move the plot forward. Like the romancing parts of the games, they don't really do much for the game apart from having a connection to someone. So it's something that could have easily been left out and the game would have remained the same. So I can see from the side of, oh yeah, that's fucking gross. He's a 15-year-old. Why the hell would you put that in the game? I can see from the side of, oh, it's historically accurate. So, but it's whatever. They put a disclaimer or they changed the codex saying, yeah, he's 20 years old. He's 20 years old. He is fully a legal consenting adult and he can choose to have sex with whomever he wants to. As long as a person they're having sex with is legal age, of course, as well. So, but yeah. Yeah, only after people started calling this dude out and calling out the company like, hey, why is a dude like 15 and being shown in game having sex? I mean, it's not just games. Anytime you see any kind of like teenage sex in movies or shows, it's just awkward. Like it's just awkward. You know, people don't want to sit there, especially if it's a show where they're sitting there watching with their kids and like there's some random like shit happens. You think it's gonna, oh, it's a nice family movie, and then you have two teens going at it. It's like, well, well. So, again, just because you can show it doesn't mean you should. When it comes to kids, teenagers, it's. But anyway, that's gonna do it for me. You guys know the drill. I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.